Hey everyone, thanks so much for jumping into today's video. We're going to be talking about deacons today, and sort of just a joke of a tagline there of deacons. What are they for? And I think what we all would all agree and kind of all know that they're there to serve the body and serve the church. And so I bring up this topic today because at our recent CLN event, Pastor Jason Baugh, who's pastor of Centerpoint Church, he did a great job of talking about pastoring to a multi-generational church and how you build a multi-generational church and how you build a leadership team that's multi-generational. And so, as a part of that, some of the resources that he had and he was using as examples of what they've done at their church, I thought one of them was really good, and it was around. It was basically a covenant that their deacons had to sign to become deacons. And I know different churches, different associations, they kind of, this whole process is very different between different churches, between different associations and those type of things. And so we're not going to get into all that today. However you do it is perfectly fine. But I did think there's some things within this covenant that I think could be useful. I think the whole thing could be useful and it could be a resource to you. And so I wanted to share it with you and talk about it a little bit. And then if you would like it, then I can make it available to you. Just shoot me an email back and just say, hey, I'd love to get a copy of that Deacon Covenant. And I'll shoot you a copy and you can take it. Jason's been so kind and generous to say, hey, if anybody wants it, just take it, share it, let them take and use it. And so we're very thankful for that. But I'm just going to share my screen with you um, so we can see it real quick. All right, so you are looking at the same thing that I'm looking at. And so this is their deacon covenant. So it's about accountability, it's standards, it's expectations, all of those type things of deacons. And I think as I'm going to read these things and share these things, I think we would all be in agreement with all of them. I think, or at least the majority of it. But in many cases, we don't have something like this in place within our churches, and so we have nothing to really hold our deacons or elders or leadership team, whatever you want to call it. We don't have anything to really hold them to and hold them accountable to, which can become a problem. And so I just want to go through these really quick. One by one. It says Sunday morning services. Now, their church that was doing 2 services at the time, I think they do 3 services now or about to start. But there was just this expectation that hey, we want you to be as a deacon, you should be a part of our services, you should be attending the services, and then you should be serving also. And so it talked about attending a service and then serving in a service. And so if you say, well, we don't have multiple services, it may look a little bit different for you. It may be, hey, we want you to be, if you're a deacon, we want you to be serving in some sort of area. Maybe it's a Sunday school teacher, or maybe it's a small group leader, maybe it's a door greeter, maybe it's they make coffee, whatever that might be. But there's an expectation that you're serving on Sunday mornings in some capacity, in some way. And so that's one of the things that's in there. Attendance, let's talk about that for a little bit. It talks about deacons are to attend at least 75% of Sunday mornings in a calendar year, as well as attend extra functions. And so if they have men's events or midweek services, family days, those type of things, there's an expectation that deacons are a part of that. All right. Now, this is one of those things that sometimes it can get. I hear about that doesn't always happen, and you may have a deacon within your church who they're not attending 75% of services, they're attending less, and maybe they're having to work on Sundays, or maybe they have a kid in maybe it's travel sports and it's taking them away from a church on Sunday mornings. And so you can, before sort of bringing somebody into deaconship or elders or whatever it is, it could be just leadership. And you have these clear expectations of, hey, if you're going to be in this position, in this role, we expect you to be here 75% of the time, 3 out of 4 Sundays. We don't think that's too much to ask for someone who's really within leadership, in a high level of leadership within our church. And so I thought that was really good. Other thing, and this might be a little bit more controversial, he talks about tithing. And there's an expectation for their deacons to tithe. 10% of their annual income is expected to be given back to the church. And it goes on and talks about how, throughout the Bible, you see that generosity is always encouraged. And if we're going to be leaders of the church, if we're going to be making big decisions and decisions with other people's finances and generosity, then we better be being generous ourselves. And so, in many cases, a lot of churches would not even consider anyone for a position like a deacon or something at that level if they knew that they were not tithing. And so, I know in some of our churches, a lot of times the pastor he doesn't know what people are giving, or they don't want to know, or either the church doesn't want them to know. But there are some instances where it can be valuable to know these things. Because again, you may not want somebody on that leadership board who's kind of making decisions for the church, who's not really financially bought into the church. And so they put that expectation within there. The next one is prayer. It says deacons are held to the expectation that they're going to provide daily prayer for the pastor, his family, the entire staff, and each deacon on the board. And so we're going to pray for our church leaders, and we're going to pray for each other. And that's an expectation that, hey, you're going to be daily praying for this leadership team. And so that's in there as well. And then the last one, it talks about they're going to be expected to connect with other families within the church. So it says each family that joins the church, they're going to be assigned a deacon, and the deacons are expected to connect with these families at minimum. It says once a month. That's outside of the church, and that's not just, hey, you're saying hi to them on Sunday morning, but this is, hey, we're going to connect with them outside the church. We're going to either give them a phone call, send them an email, send them a text. We're going to be asking if they have specific prayer needs. How can we be praying for you? How can the church help you in some way? They have that expectation set that their deacons are doing that. And one of the things that I think this does, I think there's a clear expectation within the Bible that this is a primary role of deacons, is to care for those within the church. And the other thing it does as well is it takes the pressure off of the pastor being the one who solely does that. That responsibility doesn't fall all on one person's shoulders, or the pastor, and maybe they have a youth pastor, and you guys are supposed to be checking up on everybody. No, that responsibility is shared. And one of the things as you have a growing church, especially, you need to delegate some of these responsibilities. We need deacons to take on some of this responsibility. Again, I think it's a primary role of deacons in the first place. But even outside of that, just realistically, a pastor can only be there and can only connect and can only be following up with so many people. And so being able to share that responsibility amongst the deacons is just a huge thing. It also helps in another way too. Now that I think about it, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick, but it helps in another way too, is if the pastor is the only person who's ever connecting with people and being intentional about that and checking on people and praying for people. If that's the only person they know, and God calls that pastor somewhere else to another church or whatever that might be, and that pastor leaves, then that family, the only connection that they had maybe is with the pastor. And so oftentimes what will happen is those families will leave when the pastor leaves. And so this is another way that we spread out their responsibility. They have connections with multiple people, these families do. And so if one person leaves, whether it's the pastor or whoever, they have a connection there, and they've built a connection there that's hopefully going to keep them there. So these are just a few things. I thought it was a great idea. To be honest with you, I think more churches should be doing something like this. Just setting those expectations early, and holding people accountable to the expectations. That's the other thing, and that's often the hard thing for churches, is to be able to hold people accountable to expectations because of how maybe the leadership structure is set up. It may be harder to hold people accountable. And so I just thought this was valuable. And again, you can take and use it if you want. If you do want the copy of it, so you can read over it and you can maybe show it to your leadership team and see what they think about it. By all means, shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to send it to you. Again, thanks to Pastor Jason Baugh for sharing it with me and allowing me to share it with you guys. Hope you all have a great week. I'll talk to you soon.